Welcome back to RFL. Being president of the States is arguably the most difficult job in the world, and you don't have to look very hard to find evidence. I want you to take a look at photos of President Obama before and after his 6+ years on the job. Talk about aging, right? On the left, obviously, you got the young, optimistic man who was about to make history in 2007. On the right, gray, grizzled Obama in 2015. And it's not just this president. The before and after photos of George W. Bush show what the office can do. And it was the same story if you even look at Bill Clinton. So, and I'll start with you, David. What is it that the public doesn't even see? Because everyone, you know, there's a camera every day on the president, but what is it that the public doesn't see that is just such an aging, graying component that comes along with this job?
Well, I mean, think about the responsibility. In Roosevelt's case, you take office with unemployment over 25%, places like Detroit and Chicago over 50%, nation potentially on the brink of revolution, you know, Nazi Germany on the rise, a global crisis emerging. I mean, the responsibilities of that office are enormous. And in Roosevelt's case, and I think I agree with this, you know, he was listed as a war casualty in the newspaper when he died in April of 1945. The war killed him. I mean, he was absolutely exhausted. He was a man who already had a disability, and the stresses of office wore him down steadily. And I think the intensifying of that crisis in the war, you know, working 15, 16, 17 hours a day for a man in his age and health, it was too much.
And Yannick, do you find among presidents that they'll all deal with some level of unexpected natural disaster on their watch? They'll all deal with some form of economic calamity that'll happen, obviously, that's unplanned. But if they're a wartime president, is that like double or cubed every other challenge because they've either got to write the letters or they've got to make the phone calls to the mothers or they got to greet the coffins at Dover? Is that, regardless of party, regardless of time, the hardest part of a presidency are the wars?
Absolutely. Both of the Bushes were wartime presidents, and I remember both of them talking about how painful it was to have to send men. What a first of all, a momentous decision it was to take the nation into war and then deal with the casualties of war. There's a tremendous onerous sense of responsibility that comes with that. Another thing that goes along with the aging are the health crises of presidents. Eisenhower suffered a heart attack, a stroke, a minor stroke, ileitis. Reagan had cancer while president. Especially, we aren't talking about young men. Some of them, we've had recently some young presidents, but the older presidents have had a series of health crises often that come along with the stresses of the office.
Now, the White House may be aging this president, but will it disappoint him? Many of us look back at jobs or stages of our lives with some element of regret. But will the president do the same? And his longtime advisor, David Axelrod, thinks not. In an interview, he told the Times when he, speaking of President Obama, walks out of that building, I don't think he's going to look back. I think he's perfectly happy just to be Barack Obama. And Andrew, I'm always struck. You look at any president and you say, would you like another term? To a person, they say yes, whether it's unfinished business or just there's nothing else for the rest of your life. And these are relatively, young men, that will ever approach this. Bill Clinton's talked about this often, right? Just give me one more week in there, I can do more. It's a job that nobody wants to seem to leave, although you get an impression with this president that maybe, just maybe, he's had enough after 8 years.
I think it's always when the political calculations outweigh what I think the presidents in their hearts would want to do. You know, when they go back, and if that's the one that I would have taken another swing at, my political fate be damned. And I wonder if there will be some issues, perhaps on race relations, perhaps on sentencing, perhaps on drug laws. I think there are going to be some domestic policy issues that this president may well look back on and think, boy, I wish I had used some of my political capital there when I needed to, or kept it in reserve.
Do you think there'll be an element of regret with this president when he leaves?
I think so. We were talking about this before, about a lot of Obama's legacy is what could have been done had he not encountered all these historic obstacles. And it would be impossible to look back and not think about what if those obstacles weren't there, or what if I could deal with them better.
Do you guys think it's more a specific issue that they didn't win the vote on or get even a vote on in Congress? Or do you think it's, I had this big idea when I was running that when I got elected I was going to be able to do X, but take this president, for example, and many presidents before I even walk in the office, we're on the edge of a depression here, you know, and forget about money to do anything. I'm lucky, you know, if I'm going to pay the bills here to keep the lights on in the Oval Office. So that goes out the window. The regrets more not just what might have been or what I should have done.
Well, you know, that's a tough question. I think in President Obama's case, his age is an important factor here. He's a relatively young man. He's got quite a bit of his life ahead of him. And it's a legitimate question to ask, should he have run when he ran? You know, should he have waited? Should he have waited 4 or 8 years? You know, he could easily have done so. The country would have been in a
And
different...
just as interesting, it'll be interesting for Hillary Clinton if later she'll say she's a better candidate now for having done what she did for the last 8 years than she would have been if she had won 8 years prior.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm talking in next year's context. Yannick, how long typically does it take to get a real gauge on a president's legacy?
Usually at least a decade, if not a generation. You have to wait to put things in perspective. And you also have to wait for documents and letters and correspondences from a president's administration to be declassified. And so after that time period, often a generation, 30 years or so, you're able to gain some perspective and compare that president's to what came before and what came after as well.
As we say, the most exclusive club that there is. Gentlemen, thank you very much. We'll be right back to wrap up President's Day special right after this.